Britain does convenience rather well. The general practitioner surgery 10 minutes down the road. The co-op that stays open until 9. The bus that arrives roughly when the timetable says it should. We take these things for granted because they surround us. But Britain also contains places where these certainties disappear entirely. Towns where the nearest hospital requires a ferry and a prayer for good weather. Villages where the post arrives 3 times a week if conditions permit. Communities so far from anything that residents have learned to live by entirely different rules. The people who live in Britain's most isolated places are not victims of geography. Many of them are its devoted inhabitants. They have weighed the costs and found them worth paying. Their stories deserve telling. Now, before we dive in, if you find this helpful, tap that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what is coming next. Let us begin with a place that sits on the British mainland, but might as well be on the moon. Inverie is a village on the Knoydart Peninsula in the Scottish Highlands. It has a population of around 100 people. Here is what makes it extraordinary. Although Inverie sits on the mainland of Britain, it is roadless. There is no road connecting it to anywhere else. The single-track roads of Knoydart simply do not join up with the rest of the British road network. To reach Inverie, you either take a 7-mile ferry from Mallaig, or you walk 17 miles over some of the most demanding mountain terrain in Scotland. The Old Forge pub in Inverie holds a Guinness World Record. It is officially the most remote pub on mainland Britain. In 2022, residents came together and bought the pub themselves to keep it alive. The crowdfunding campaign attracted support from around the world. The pub is now owned by the Knoydart Foundation, a community land trust that manages much of the peninsula. The village also operates entirely off the national electricity grid. A community-run hydroelectric scheme powers around 100 homes. When the generator needs repairs, someone in the village has to know how to fix it. Self-sufficiency is not an abstract ideal here. It is Tuesday afternoon. The people of Inverie have chosen this life deliberately. They have chosen beauty and community over convenience. Every delivery, every visitor, every piece of post arrives by boat or by foot. There is no popping to the shops. There is no calling a plumber from the next town. You learn to fix things yourself, or you learn to wait. Travelling further north, we reach Fair Isle. This small island sits halfway between Orkney and Shetland. It measures just 3 miles by 1.5 miles. In 2001, the population stood at 69. By the 2022 census, that number had fallen to just 44 permanent residents. Fair Isle is the most remote inhabited island in the United Kingdom. It is famous for 2 things. Birdwatchers know it for the observatory that has documented migrating species for decades. The Bird Observatory was established in 1948 and has recorded hundreds of thousands of bird sightings since. Rare vagrants blown off course from Siberia and North America make landfall here. Ornithologists travel from across the world for the chance to see species that appear nowhere else in Britain. Knitters know Fair Isle for the distinctive patterned style that bears its name. The geometric designs in multiple colours have been produced here for centuries. Local knitters still create garments using traditional techniques passed down through generations. Each piece takes hours of careful work. The craft connects present residents to ancestors who knitted by firelight through long winter nights. But what strikes you about Fair Isle is what is missing. There are no emergency medical services on the island. A community nurse provides routine care. If something serious happens, casualties must wait for a helicopter air ambulance from Shetland. The nearest doctor is 30 miles away. The nearest hospital, dentist and optician are all 50 miles distant. Children must leave the island at age 11 to attend secondary school on mainland Shetland, 50 miles from their families. The residents of Fair Isle are not stubborn. They are devoted. They have calculated what they gain against what they lack, and they have chosen to stay. West of Fair Isle lies Fola. If Fair Isle seems remote, Fola exists in another category entirely. This island in the Shetland archipelago had a population of 30 in 2011. By 2022, only 17 people remained. The name Fola comes from the Old Norse for Bird Island. The Vikings named it for the seabirds that darken the skies during breeding season. Those birds still come. Fola hosts one of the largest colonies of great skuas in the world. These powerful seabirds are known locally as bonxies. They are fiercely territorial and will dive bomb anyone who approaches their nests. Walking across Fola during breeding season requires a stick held above your head to deflect attacks. Fola keeps its own time. When Britain adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1752, Fola declined to participate. The island still follows a version of the old Julian calendar. Christmas Day on Fola falls on the 6th of January. New Year arrives on the 13th. The residents celebrate when their traditions say to celebrate, regardless of what the rest of Britain does. In the 1960s, winter storms cut Fola off from the mainland for 77 consecutive days. No ferry, no supplies, no contact. The islanders survived on what they had stored and what they could catch. This was not ancient history. People alive today remember those 77 days. That experience shapes how Fola residents prepare for winter even now. Between Orkney and the Scottish mainland lies an island that once held a far larger population. Stroma sits in the Pentland Firth, one of the most dangerous stretches of water in Europe. Tidal currents here can reach 12 knots. Ships have foundered in these waters for centuries. In 1900, over 300 people lived on Stroma. They fished, farmed and raised families in stone cottages that still stand today. By 1962, the last permanent residents had left. The island is now home only to sheep and seabirds. But the abandoned village remains, a ghost settlement where roofs have collapsed and walls crumble slowly into the grass. Stroma represents what happens when isolation finally wins. When the young leave for opportunities elsewhere and the old cannot maintain the struggle alone, it stands as a warning to every isolated community in Britain. Population decline, once it begins, can become irreversible. Coming south to England, we find Alston in Cumbria. This small market town of just over 2,000 people claims a significant title. It is the highest market town in England, sitting around 1,000 feet above sea level. The nearest town of any size lies 20 miles away. Alston looks like a proper town. It has a cobbled main street, stone buildings, a market cross. The architecture speaks of prosperity that came from lead mining in centuries past, but it functions with the resources of a village. The secondary school, Samuel King's School, is the smallest in England. It has existed in some form since 1570. Generations of Alston children have received their education within its walls. In winter, the roads into Alston can close for days. On the 17th of January 1881, the temperature fell to minus 22.8 degrees Celsius. That remains the lowest temperature ever recorded in Cumbria. The people who live in Alston possess a particular kind of resilience. They stock their pantries before winter arrives. They know their neighbours because knowing your neighbours is not optional when the snow comes. When roads close, the community looks after itself. Farmers check on elderly residents. Neighbours share supplies. Off the Devon coast, 12 miles from Bideford, lies Lundy Island. The average residential population stands at 28 people. Every single one of them works for the Landmark Trust, which manages the island for the National Trust. There is a warden, an island manager, a farmer, a shopkeeper, maintenance staff, housekeeping staff, and a bar and kitchen team. That is your community. 28 people who came to work and stayed to live. Lundy has attracted eccentric characters throughout its history. In the 1920s, a man named Martin Coles Harmon purchased the island and declared himself king. He minted his own coins called puffins and half-puffins. The British government prosecuted him for issuing illegal currency. His coins remain collector's items today, and the story captures something essential about Lundy. It attracts people who want to live by their own rules. The island's name comes from the Old Norse word for puffin. These distinctive seabirds once bred here in enormous numbers. By the 20th century, rats had devastated the puffin population. A major eradication program removed the rats in 2006. Since then, puffin numbers have slowly recovered. More than 20,000 visitors come to Lundy each year. Many are day trippers who arrive on the morning boat and leave on the evening one. They see the puffins, walk the cliff paths, and have a drink at the Morisco Tavern. Then they leave. The 28 residents watch them go. Then they return to the reality of island life. When the last boat departs, Lundy becomes properly isolated. Just the wind, the waves, and each other. On the Northumberland coast, Holy Island presents a different kind of isolation. Twice each day, the North Sea reclaims the causeway connecting Lindisfarne to the mainland. For several hours at high tide, Holy Island becomes genuinely cut off. Cars cannot cross, pedestrians cannot wade. Holy Island carries enormous historical weight. In 635, monks from Iona established a monastery here. The Lindisfarne Gospels, one of the finest examples of medieval manuscript art, were created on this island around the year 700. Viking raids in 793 shocked the Christian world and marked the beginning of the Norse Age in Britain. Around 160 people live on Holy Island permanently. During tourist hours, the population swells enormously. Coaches arrive. Day trippers fill the narrow streets. Then the tide turns. The tourists check their crossing times and hurry back to the mainland before the sea returns. And the residents have their island back. 3 pubs and a hotel still operate. The shop has closed, but the post office remains. For anything else, residents drive to Berwick upon Tweed when the causeway permits. The causeway itself claims victims every year. Despite prominent warning signs and published tide tables, drivers misjudge their timing. Cars become stranded as water rises. The isolation of Holy Island is rhythmic and predictable. The moon controls the timetable. Residents have simply learned to live by lunar time. Off the coast of Gwynedd in Wales lies Bardsey Island. The Welsh call it Ynys Enlli. Medieval pilgrims believed that 3 pilgrimages to Bardsey equalled 1 pilgrimage to Rome. Legend claims that 20,000 saints lie buried here. Pilgrims made the dangerous crossing in small boats, many perishing in the treacherous currents of Bardsey Sound. Today, Bardsey supports a small community and a bird observatory. The island is an important breeding site for Manx shearwaters. On summer nights, the air fills with their eerie calls compared to screaming babies or wailing ghosts. What cannot be disputed is the current population. 4 people live on Bardsey Island permanently. 4. When your entire community fits at a single dinner table, isolation takes on a different meaning. Every task requires cooperation. Every absence is felt. In the Scottish Highlands, the village of Scoraig made a remarkable decision decades ago. When the authorities offered to build a road connecting Scoraig to the outside world, the community said no. They preferred their isolation. They chose to remain reachable only by a 5-mile coastal walk or by boat from Badluarach jetty. Around 70 people live in Scoraig today. The village operates largely off-grid. Residents generate their own power and grow much of their own food. Wind turbines and solar panels dot the hillsides. The primary school has sought teachers willing to embrace this life. Job advertisements have mentioned the need for emotional stability and self-reliance. The people of Scoraig chose to reject connection. They built a community around that rejection. Whether the next generation will make the same choice remains to be seen. In mid-Wales, the Cambrian mountains stretch across a vast and sparsely populated landscape. Locals sometimes call this region the Desert of Wales, not because it lacks rain, but because it lacks people. The population density in parts of the Cambrian mountains falls below 4 people per square kilometre. Small villages and isolated farms dot this landscape. The nearest services are always over the next hill. Ambulances take longer to arrive, and deliveries require patience. Farmers work land that their families have worked for generations. They know every hill and stream, and they understand the weather in ways that forecasters never will. In Northumberland, villages along the Scottish border occupy a peculiar position. They sit in England, but feel distant from it. Hadrian's Wall runs through some of these parishes. The remains of Roman civilization crumble in back gardens. The isolation here comes not from dramatic geography, it comes from being forgotten. These border villages represent what one property researcher described as remote living immersed in history and natural splendour. They attract people yearning for retreat from the modern world, and the modern world has largely obliged by leaving them alone. In Suffolk, isolation takes a surprising form. Kelsale and Yoxford do not look remote. No mountains surround them, no sea cuts them off. But according to government accessibility data, they rank as the most isolated places in Suffolk and among the top 10 most isolated in the entire country. To reach key services by public transport or on foot takes an average of 87 minutes. 87 minutes to reach a doctor when you are ill. 87 minutes to collect a prescription. 87 minutes that a resident of London or Birmingham would find unthinkable. Isolation is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply inconvenient in ways that compound over years. This kind of isolation affects the elderly most severely. A retired person without a car faces genuine difficulty accessing routine healthcare. Rural bus services have been cut repeatedly over recent decades. Routes that once connected villages to market towns have disappeared. What was once a minor inconvenience has become a genuine barrier to independent living. Some elderly residents have been forced to move closer to towns simply to access medical appointments. Others rely entirely on neighbours and family members for transport. The social contract that once connected rural Britain to its services has frayed badly. The economic realities of isolation deserve attention too. Running a business in a remote location means higher delivery costs and longer wait times for supplies. Tradespeople charge more for call-outs when travel takes hours rather than minutes. House prices may be lower, but running costs are often higher. Heating oil must be delivered by tanker. Internet connections remain unreliable in many areas despite government promises. Mobile phone signals vanish entirely in valleys and behind hills. These are not minor inconveniences. They shape every decision residents make. Finally, we come to a place that is not a village at all. In the Scottish Highlands, in the region of Wester Ross, lies the shores of Fionn Loch. According to detailed mapping analysis, this is the most remote location in the entire United Kingdom. The nearest minor road is 5.7 miles away. No permanent human settlement exists in the northern half of Wester Ross, between Little Loch Broom and Loch Maree. The writer Alfred Wainwright called it the last great wilderness of Scotland. This is an ancient landscape. The mountains here are among the oldest on Earth. Torridonian sandstone laid down over 1 billion years ago forms peaks that have weathered into distinctive shapes. Walkers who venture into this wilderness find themselves in terrain that feels genuinely primeval. No one lives at Fionn Loch. No one claims it. It exists as a set of coordinates representing maximum distance from anything. In a nation as densely populated as Britain, there remains a place nearly 6 miles from the nearest road. The wild persists. Britain contains multitudes. The market towns with their reliable buses exist alongside islands where the post arrives when weather permits. The high streets where everything is convenient sit in the same nation as peninsulas where convenience is a foreign concept. The people who live in these isolated places have chosen something most of us cannot imagine choosing. They have chosen beauty over convenience, community over connection, and self-reliance over easy assistance. They wake up knowing that help is far away, and they go to sleep having solved problems that we would simply Google. They deserve our respect, not our pity. They know things about community, about resilience, about what truly matters, that the rest of us might need to learn. If you live in one of these places, I want to hear from you. Tell me what the statistics cannot capture. Tell me what isolation actually feels like, what it costs, what it gives. If you have visited these communities, share your experiences. Local knowledge is always worth more than research from a distance. These places are real. The people in them are our neighbours, however far away they might be. And their stories matter. Please watch the video appearing on your screen next, and do not forget to subscribe.